The Full Spectrum Podcast, presented by Champions and Legends. Champions and Legends produces hemp-derived CBD sports supplements for athletic preparation, performance, and recovery. Discover Champions and Legends on the World Wide Web at championsandlegends.com. This is the Full Spectrum Podcast with Big Data and Maverick, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone. It's Maverick back at you. It's the Full Spectrum Podcast. For the last couple of weeks, we have been kind of teasing you a little bit with regards to what we were coming up with. And let's call it what it is, Big Data, the CEO behind the scenes. This is why he doesn't answer my phone calls anymore. He's been working the press. He's been working everyone. And he found maybe the coolest guy out there, one of the greatest names in sports media. I personally believe the hardest working guy in sports media. Who is he? Well, let me give you a little bit of hint, all right? It's the guy, he gets into the locker rooms. He gets into the front offices in the NFL. He works on Sundays for us, the big NFL guys, the guys that need all that information so we can place our bets. And P.S., thank you, sir, because I smashed it this year. I really do appreciate it. He's also the guy that also brought you some of the biggest news over the last little while in the NFL, Spygate, and he was the first one to report that Mr. Brady was going to Tampa Bay. Who else is he? He's a co-owner of the Unbreakable Performance Center. He's also one of Champion and Legends brand ambassadors. He's the founder of one of the coolest charities I've ever heard of, the MVP, merging veterans and players. It's Mr. Jay Glazer. Jay, thank you for joining us here on the Full Spectrum Podcast.
Absolutely, man. Happy to join you guys.
We're pumped to have you, man, and we're super excited. I mean, we're a little dumbfounded because, you know, the CEO doesn't really ever give us the opportunity to talk to anyone. So now we got you're so high up on the scale here.
No,
Man.
I'm just a squirrel trying to get a nut. That's it. That's as you said, man. I'm just trying to outwork the world everywhere I can, and I got connected to you guys there with Sonny because I play a game of pain. I report on the NFL. And have for years. I don't know if I had the Brady scoop. I don't think I had Brady's scoop, although I was with him after the Super Bowl the other night on a boat. But that's a different story. But man, you know, I've been in, you know, for my mental health, I've always needed to train. And, you know, I used to fight way back in the day. And then when I signed with Fox, they made me stop. But I couldn't stop doing it. I had to continue doing something. And it kind of, you know, even though I do all this other great stuff and, you know, NFL wise, and just me stepping in the cage is what made me always feel a little bit different than everybody else. But as a result of that, my other hobby, like, do I wish my hobby was checkers? Yeah, but it's not. But as a result of that, man, I've lived a life of pain. I've trained, I created the first cross-training mixed martial arts program for NFL players. So it's kind of weird. I was covering the NFL, but then training these guys in MMA to try to teach them how the fighter mentality more. And as a result of that, I've had, let me see here. I've herniated, I've ruptured L1, L2 twice, L4, L5, S1 4 times. I've dislocated my elbow. A guy named Ed Ruth dislocated my elbow, tore my bicep, broke my ankle twice, woke up during that surgery, broke my nose 6 or 7 times. So Payne and I have had a tore my calf. I mean, it goes on. Payne and I have had a really good, we've had a good arrangement over the years. We got a pretty good agreement. And, man, when CBD first came out, I started trying it. And, you know, there's way back when I tried something that I put on, you know, the sublingual, and I was like, man, I think this stuff is actually pretty good. I think it's going to work. And but it was just more like, it wasn't like a product. It was just somebody coming in. Living here in LA, it's kind of easy to get stuff. So over time, though, I was like, man, I believe in this CBD, but I want to find one that I know works for me. And I kept going through stuff. And then Sonny sent me out just a care package of stuff. And I sat there for a while, and I started putting it on one day. And I think I was coming off the elbow. No, it wasn't the elbow. I don't know. I was coming off something. Oh, I think another back procedure. And but also I have really bad TMJ where I can't go to sleep at night. So I started putting this stuff on my jaw, and I started putting it on my lower back. And then all of a sudden, I remember that day I go out and train. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. I didn't feel my back like I normally do. What's going on here? And then I'm like, wait, could it have been this stuff? And then I did it again the next day. And I'm like, I think it was this stuff. And then I did it again the next day. I'm like, oh my God, I think it was this. I think it was this stuff. And I'm like, yes, I finally found what works for me. And then I shifted over again to the TMJ, and like, man, like sleep for me is awful. And to be able to, I guess you just hear that boom, boom, boom every night from this TMJ. And I finally found something that gives me a little relief. And I know it's a long answer here, guys, but that's how I got involved in the Champions and Legends, and how I got brought into this family that I'm proud to be part of.
Well, that's absolutely awesome, Jay. Yeah, it's a great product. It's a great family. You know, speaking of training those athletes, the NFL athletes, and you know, Maverick and I, we grew up watching you on TV, as did all these NFL players that are out there today. What do you, or how do you leverage your celebrity and your training of these athletes into your NFL job and getting the scoops and, like you said, making those relationships?
Well, it's funny. Like, I'm just a relationship kind of guy, so I don't become friends with someone just so I can get a scoop. And one of the things I did early on is like, I'm going to be a relationship guy, and that's where I try and tell a lot of these young reporters also, don't go for the scoop, like go for the relationship, and the scoops will come. You know, if somebody gives me a scoop and he's like, but don't use it, right? Like, I'm going to tell you something, man, it's off the record. You can't use it. Well, then I use it anyway. I burn them, and I burn that relationship, and who knows how much other information this guy would have given me throughout the years. And, you got to go for the relationship. Now, as far as training these guys, it's me opening up Unbreakable. And again, I say I train, and actually one of the guys I train with, Jay Glazer, just walked in at my house as we speak. The ex-world champ here, he's doing a great job in the acting world now. And me and him together, we had our first fight together at a high school gymnasium in Jersey in 2003. And he's staying at my house out here in LA, and he trains our players with me as well. But, like I said, I suffer from depression. So for my depression, a cage is where I feel most comfortable. A cage or on TV is where I feel comfortable, which is weird, which you normally scare the hell out of the rest of the world, right? If you're sitting there on TV and you're next to Terry Bradshaw and Howie Long, most people would be horrified, or certainly in a cage with Jay Glazer or Chuck Liddell or Randy Couture, down the barrel of their fists, most people would scare the hell out of them. For me, that's where I feel comfortable. And the rest of the world for me is scary. The rest of the world is where I have a problem with depression and anxiety. So I have to train. And for depression, I've always tried to build teams. And that's like a fight team. And that's what MVP is for me also. And I've always tried to be of service to others. And that's what MVP is. But over the years, because all these players started coming out to me, I didn't have to go fly all over the country to all these different events. Now all of a sudden guys started flying out to me. So that helped me as far as the information is concerned. Like, it got me more relationships and guys coming to me, and obviously a different level of relationships. When you can put your hands on somebody, it's a totally different, different relationship.
Oh, sure.
And our training system is hard, man. But I tell these guys all the time, man, if you come in here and it's not for everybody. If you don't like football, we're not the ones for you. If you don't want to be great, we're not the ones for you, because we're going to train you so hard that football is going to become easy. But if you follow us, we will change your grandkids' lives. And that's the line I use to these players who come in here. And a lot of these players we've trained, they've gone out and gotten multi-million-dollar contracts that have changed their grandkids' lives. And I'm proud of that.
Wow, that's amazing. So, Jay, how has the pandemic affected the training you're doing, and what can you do these days to keep in the right mindset?
Well, for MVP, and for people that don't know what MVP, that's my other. And again, I try and build teams and communities. So Unbreakable is a community, and I tell everybody in Unbreakable, hey, that's my gym. But that's our fight team. And we got your back. We walk this walk with you, whether you're in the gym or outside. And that's how I feel better. I could go walk in any meeting knowing that, all right, I'm not like everybody else here. And I got a good fight team behind me and a good community. And that's what Unbreakable is. But MVP, our charity, was born out of Unbreakable. And that's where we're putting former combat vets and former NFL players. But then now it's it's all pro athletes or Olympians, and we're putting these athletes and vets, when the uniform comes off, they lose their tribe. They lose that team that I'm talking about, that community. So I'm putting them back together, and we're in 5 cities right now. 5 years, our first 5 years, in 5 cities, man. I would say, I just asked Denver Morris, who's one of our employees the other day. He's the first guy we ever hired there. Said, how many members, what percentage do you think attempted suicide before joining MVP? And he said probably in the 90 percentile. And in the first 5 years of MVP, the number of suicides has been 0. Like none. We have not lost one since joining this group, because we give you this team again. So when the pandemic hit, our vets started freaking out. And you know, these guys were always telling not to isolate. Now all of a sudden they're saying, whoa, now we're being told to isolate? So within 48 hours, and they were asking us, please, can we not shut down? We need this. Like, we can't. This is not, you know, again, this is a life and death situation. And man, Nate Boyer, my partner, and I for MVP, we were literally on 24-hour suicide watch for the first couple weeks. But we were probably the first place that found Zoom. We had to figure out a way how we stay socially connected. And remember, everybody was trying to say socially distanced. We changed it to no, we're going to be physically distanced, but we're staying socially connected. And I went on Good Morning America with my baby sister Strahan, and used that term in that first week. We will be physically distant but socially connected, and started getting picked up. But so we started doing this on Zoom, and we're still doing it on Zoom. And look, you got to make the best situation you can out of whatever's given you, right? So like in a fight, we got 1 minute to change. If our game plan's not working, we got a minute to change something up so our guy doesn't get knocked out, right, or choked out or tapped. In a football game, man, you got 45 seconds sometimes. Okay, you got to change things up. We're at the line of scrimmage. Obviously, in battle, it's just on site. You got to sometimes change your game plan immediately. It's life or death. So for us, we couldn't just sit there and be upset that we were on lockdown and quarantine. And man, we had to figure out a way to make this thing better for us. So, in person, we used to get about 50, 60 of us together in person every week. But all of a sudden now, because of Zoom, man, we're getting 90 on a call, or 98 on a call, and we're getting them from all over the country, where we wouldn't have been able to touch this person from Seattle or grab this person from San Antonio in the past. So it's actually been, in that way, we've used it to reach more people in need. That's our only choice.
That's simply amazing, man. That's simply amazing. I got a quick question for you. Actually, Big Data, I think you had one more.
Yeah,
than you
Jay, I just wanted to get your perspective on analytics in the NFL now. Being the big data guy, I like to formulate my opinions from seeing what's going on in the field, but I need some kind of numbers to help me quantify
You're probably not going
happening.
to like the answer, because you're probably not going to like it. Every time I talk about analytics, like, listen, I'm old school, and every time I bring it up, people go nuts on me. And the problem is that people are now hiring people because of analytics, but analytics doesn't judge violence. And you're playing a game of violence. Analytics doesn't judge, okay, yeah, it may tell you to go for it on 4th and 1 here, but is there anything in there about you being down to your 3rd left tackle, and this left tackle is awful? Or, so I do think there's I think there's room. I just think it's not being used in the right place. And I think it's being leaned on in place of things that, like, look, you need to, there's things in there that it's, baseball and football are 2 totally different games. There's a lot that goes on there between the ears and behind the rib cage that analytics doesn't cover. But I think there's a lot of great places to use it. Yes, percentages, but I just think it's being overused, I guess, in certain situations, and guys are just blanketing it. Well, the analytics say this. Okay, but the analytics, is it talking about this mismatch where, man, I'm down to my 4th right guard, and this guy was working at Walmart last week. And now all of a sudden he's trying to block Aaron Donald. Like, is that in there?
Yeah, it's definitely an art. Maverick and I talk about it on the podcast all the time, and when the Rays took Snell out in that game 7, and a few other situations with McVay or Shanahan is definitely an art. And yeah, you definitely need.
But look at the old school guys, right? Mike Tomlin's, the Sean Paytons, Bill Belichick. You don't really hear much about it.
That's right.
Take that for data.
Andy Reid, you don't hear much about it, right? Bruce Arians, you don't hear much about it. And so I just think there's something to be said for that old school thing. Like for me, look, what we teach our fighters, we're pace and violence, pace and violence, pace and violence. We're relentless, 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 relentless. We don't show it. Am I trying to teach them? Well, I love to teach them new tricks or this, sure. But my core is pace, violence, pace, violence. It's relentless, relentless, relentless until somebody says, oh my God, get Randy Couture off me. Get Jay Glazer off me. Get this player off me. Like just enough. I've had it. And that's my lane. That's my box. That's what I know. But if somebody comes to me and says, hey man, I got, analytics to show us if you do this. Well, where analytics did show me something was I need to, back in the day, I was training so hard, but I wasn't recovering enough. So that's why I need to be smart and listen to analytics in that way. Man, the more I recovered, then all of a sudden I realized, man, the healthier I am, the more I can smash somebody. So I did start to listen to those numbers. So it's, again, just where it's used. You've got to be smart where it's used.
See, this is why I like Jay Glazer. This is exactly it, Big Data. I told you all that data.
No, it's not. That's what I'm saying. But I have to use it in the right place. And,
that's right.
Man, I was training 3 times a day and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, man, all of a sudden my hands are all the way down here. And I'm going against Chuck Liddell. And man, if I was healthier, my hands would be up. Is he still going to kick my ass? Yeah. But it'd be a lot better if my hands were blocking my face instead of down by my waist. So, man, so then we do get into data. We're data driven at Unbreakable. So we do a lot of that in how we train people. But I'm just talking about game situations. So I guess I was looking at your question as in relation to football, because what's happening now also in analytics, people are like, oh, we need to hire these coaches based on analytics. No, man, hire this guy and what kind of culture he could build.
Absolutely. Jay, I got a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. And you know what? I'm going to change it up a little bit. I knew you loved the fight game, but I'm going to tweak my question. Being that we have you on the podcast, I got to ask you simply about the Super Bowl. 2 weeks ago, you got Tom Brady and the boys. And by the way, little FYI, I got that information that you broke that story from your good friend, Colin Hurd, that I listen to quite religiously as well. He drops your name. So it wasn't me finding it anywhere, just letting you know.
I think I did. I don't know if I did. I don't think I did. Oh.
He says you did.
No,
I can show you the
it.
podcast where he says it.
But here's the thing too, like Spygate, I always remember. That changed my life. I broke the end of the lockout,
of course.
And that I always remember because I was the only reporter who refused to go to the courthouse steps every damn day because I like my life too much. I'm like, these guys know. I said, you guys report on every jab thrown. There's a knockout. I'll report on it. But there's the few that stand out. But the rest of them, and it's another thing I tell reporters, like, man, you get beat on a story or, A, don't ever get anything wrong. But B, if you get beat on it, there's huge stories you have. None of us remember you're the one who had it or you had this, you had that. And, like, again, for me, in my mind, breaking the end of the lockout was huge. You guys didn't know that. So it's like kind of like what we have in our own heads. I don't remember a lot of the ones that I do have. I just know I always try and be right. That's all I care about. That's what I care most about.
Absolutely. That's the most important. But with you being on the pod, I got to ask you, I'm sure you were at the Super Bowl this couple of weeks ago and you were watching your boys, the Tampa Bay, you're watching your friends, I'm sure, over in the Kansas City sidelines. I'm just going to ask you straight this question. What happened? I mean, the media pumped this up as going to be the greatest Super Bowl of all time. You got Tom versus Mahomes. What happened to Kansas City in that game? If you can give us a little bit of a rundown, and then I got another question for you after.
Yeah, nobody's really talking about Tampa's defense, and we should have been, and man, it's just such a different year. It was such a different kind of year. So anything that you would say happened crazy that happened this year, it's just a different type of year. But man, when you talk to the Bucks, they were positive going in that they would be disruptors in that game. And that's a smart coaching staff. You look at the coaching staff Bruce Arians put together, it's an incredibly smart coaching staff. And man, Vegas got after the Chiefs early in the season with pressure. and they were getting after him, pressure, and just, I still think Kansas City. Listen, Patrick Mahomes is damn near perfect. This guy's going to win. Tom's the best who's ever been around, obviously, but I think Patrick. When can you ever give a guy $500 million and he doesn't change? So I think they're going to be in it for a long time.
Absolutely. You know what? With your passion behind fighting and everything like that, I know that's kind of like how you were. Basically, you got yourself into the whole sports industry and everything. I guess I'd be remiss not to at least ask you a couple of questions in the fight game when it comes to what happened to Conor McGregor. Let's talk about that. I mean, Vegas and everyone and their dog was anticipating Conor coming back, was getting into the ring. And if you don't mind me saying, I'm not the big, like, I love my fight games. I buy the pay-per-views. I'll watch it. But, Jay, I got to ask you, didn't he look different to you? Didn't he look like he wasn't himself? Or was it just me? Am I crazy?
I think Conor said it right. Like, man, he was just that's a sport you got to be in for a while. It's hard to have layoffs like that, and it's a different set of nerves in there. And the guy he went against, gangster. We forgot about that. Like, he's just gotten better and better and better and better and better. And I think Conor, the way he explained it, was perfect. Conor's like, this is a sport I need to be in more. I need to change my style up. Like, he's had the same style. Poirier and them had a great game plan going in, attacking that front leg. And it was like the Bucks. They just had a great game plan going in.
Absolutely. You know what? I watched it and I couldn't believe it. I was a little surprised. And you know what? I like to put a little money down. I'm not going to lie to you.
Steve, I'll tell you this.
P.S. I'm hoping.
And I'm not going to say who it is. But, man, somebody was training. Somebody was using our gym. And he looked fantastic. And I was like, hey, dude, keep your hands up. Just make sure we keep our hands up. Also, he had like an injury. And I was like, why don't we let this heal? But also, man, I need you to start keeping your hands up. You get a little cocky. And he was a champ. And he's like, no, I control the range. I'm like, no, you don't. No one controls the range in this sport, man. Like, you don't control the range. Like, when people, they do crazy stuff in this sport, and you think, yes, you want to kind of set the range, but you don't control the range for all 25 minutes of this fight. It just doesn't happen like that. And literally, I had a friend in there. He's like, hey, he's going to lay down big money on my boy. I'm like, nope, don't do it. He's like, what? It's your boy. I'm like, don't do it. He's like, but it's your guy. He looks great. I said, physically looks great. But, man, he doesn't let one thing heal, and he's not listening about this other thing. He's just like, he doesn't decide he doesn't always control the range. And, man, I wouldn't do it. And I know what the other guy was going to do to him. And I kept, like, going over. And, again, he's not one of my fighters, just somebody that was that uses our spot. And who I love, good friend. And sure enough, man, he got knocked out, and there's a lot for. It's funny because the other thing I try and do with these two sports is fighters. Man, Randy Couture is the first one I ever knew who watched film, right? Back in the day, and Randy had one of the biggest fight teams you could have. Nobody else did that, and I was trying to teach these fighters how to think like football players. Like football player, man, me being with Michael Strahan all these years. And he killed my social life. I'd sit there and he'd be like watching film and watching film, watching me like, look at this. I'm like, what are you looking at? I don't see it. He's like, look at the right tackle's right foot. Whenever they boot the other way, look how his toes are pointed in. I'm like, how do you see this? But it's that's what these guys look at. Like, in order to play in the NFL, you've got to be smart. If you want to be great, you got to be brilliant. And it's repetitive over and over and over. And I would try and tell these fighters the same thing. Listen, try and find out whatever their A, B, and C is, and take it away. Whoever your opponent's, whatever his first, second, and third best weapons are, take that away. Make him beat you with D, E, and F. And that's what the Patriot way was for all those years. And conversely, I would tell our football players, man, you see this fight mentality that these guys have? If I could just take what they have and put it behind your rib cage, think about what you guys could do. So I try and take the fighter away and give it to the football players, and give the smarts of the football players. And like, I try and take the fighter will and put it in the football players, and the football players' smarts and put it into the fighters.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. You got to have that right mindset. You're totally right. So that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to that fight as well. All right. One last question for you, Jay, before we get to the great debate. It's simply this, my friend, with your amazing charity MVP, can you give us kind of the taglines? Like, where can we find it? If some people are listening and they want to get involved, how do they do that?
Pro athlete or Olympian or or any combat vet out there or combat support vet, where you go to vetsandplayers.org, vetsandplayers.org. We have 5 Zooms a week, depending where you live. We're just trying to build a community again. We're trying to get our veterans to look at it like, man, they go overseas and they do all these great things. You grace under fire and courage under pressure. And all of a sudden they come back home and they're like, oh man, I'm different. And I'm trying to get them to understand, no, you're different. Different is good. Different is what leads us to success. But they're told in the military, nope, it's about the team. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. I'm trying to get them to be vulnerable, start talking about it. Because like all of us, we try and get jobs. We use our resumes. We pump ourselves up, right? Our vets don't. They're ingrained to go the other way. And that's why we have such a high suicide rate. And there's a homeless rate. And just, man, we had Sylvester Stallone came in and talked to the whole group. And he said, I made First Blood 45 years ago to show the plight of veterans with the system. And we're 45 years later, you guys are going through the same things. So it needs to be on you, right? And if you get help from the VA or anybody else, great. It's like you hit the lottery. But when you're trying to walk that walk alone, it's hard to do. So if you got a new team and they're trying, and we're building you up now, reminding you what your greatness was, and it wasn't just the uniform, it lies what's behind your rib cage. That's when we could really help out. And same with our pro athletes. Like I've had so many, me and Strahan, I've had so many friends over the years. They finish up and they just, man, waste away. And they're just like, oh man, I used to play in the NFL. And I'm trying to change that narrative. Like, no, dude, you play in the NFL, and you play in the NFL is not who you are. Think of what you got behind your ribcage that propelled you to beat out millions upon millions upon millions to get to that level. That didn't suddenly just leave. Why do you think it left? But no one's coaching them to do that. So when I put them together and they coach each other up, it's peer-on-peer therapy is what it is. It's peer-on-peer, like we have a clinical director, but really we're there lifting each other up. It's peer-on-peer therapy, and it's great, man. It's beautiful. And again, man, it helps me with my depression that I have a team like this, and then we could be of service to other people.
That's amazing, Jay. You know what, Jay? We'll get to the last bit of the podcast. We have this thing that me and Big Data do each week. We call it the Great Debate.
Let's do it.
I mean, we can sit here and we can talk about the LeBron versus Michael idea. See, that's what we always say too. We could talk about, you know, if Tom's the greatest GOAT of all time versus, let's say, Gretzky. Sure. But here's the one I want to ask you, right? Here's the scenario. It's Thanksgiving. We're over at your house. You've invited me and Big Data, which we appreciate, by the way. So we're at your house, right? And it's flag football time. You get to pick first pick overall, the Glazer Cup. Who are you taking with your first overall pick? Any friend of yours, anybody in the world, who are you taking? Patrick Mahomes. I like it. Really? Well, you dropped Michael Strahan about 100 times in this podcast. I thought for sure.
The shiftiest, best, most creative guy out there. Are you kidding me? Strahan can't run like Mahomes.
I love it. That's Big Data. Who you?
I got to go with the GOAT. He knows how to win. You got to go with Brady.
You know what? Listen, if you're going to learn one thing about me, Jay, it's this. Brett, if you come to my office right now, I got Brett Favre up on my wall, but I'm not picking Brett. I'm not going to take him. You know why? Because I may have found somebody that I may love more. Offense wins games. Defense wins championships. James Harrison all day, all day long. James Harrison, first order.
James is going to knock out everybody else on the team, so I kind of agree with you on that.
Thank you very much. There it is. Jay, thank you so much for your time. Big Data, thank you again. And seriously, what an honor it is to have you, and keep crushing it, Jay. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Absolutely. 1 second. Let me just get a sip of coffee. I'm nervous.
What are you nervous about?
Jay's got me all nervous. I'm nervous, man. This is our first time, man.
Is this how you?
I mean, you sit next to Terry Bradshaw.
Well,
it's not like that. It's just
like you're the biggest dude in the room.
There you go.
You know what? You literally sit next to Terry Bradshaw. How big? I mean, how much bigger can
this
get?
You got to walk in like you own the room. No matter where you are.
I love it.
Go in the room.
I love it. You know what? And let's start it right from there.
The Full Spectrum Podcast, presented by Champions and Legends. Champions and Legends produces hemp-derived CBD sports supplements for athletic preparation, performance, and recovery. Discover Champions and Legends on the World Wide Web at championsandlegends.com.